Good evening, everybody. Welcome to people I haven't met before and those I've met before a while back. And everybody up on the screen. Welcome this evening. This beautiful evening. How wonderful. And the kinhin outside in the breeze. It's like a celebration, the breeze. Well, I just got back from a teachers meeting at the monastery, which was attended by teachers from a number of different lineages, many of whom I've known for years. One I met newly, but I think that we've known each other for many lifetimes. There's something about the Dharma connection that is timeless. And so when we meet each other, we recognize each other in the most essential way, even though we might say, what is your name? Where are you from? Where do you live? But most essentially, we all live in the same heart. And that's what we're doing together as we practice here, is discovering that heart that has always been who we are. And we may have forgotten or lost track of. And we slowly come back to it. One of the things that everybody kept coming back to in whatever our sharings were was how many years it takes to really see the full extent of the reach of the Dharma, of Dharma wisdom. And it is always ongoing, always ongoing. It's not a product, but we experience it as the fruit of a lot of effort and the fruit of a lot of blessing that we receive. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight is this blessing and the continuation as it comes into our culture. We began with several Dharma talks given by the heads of lineages that do a very, very traditional practice and training. Just about everybody at this meeting is a priest. And so they wore the priest garb. And then there are a few of us who are not priests, are not ordained. But the funny thing is that the Jukai ceremony, when we receive the 16 precepts, is an ordination ceremony. So we might say we're householder ordained. Kyogen Carlson, who was the founding teacher of Dharma Rain Zen Center, would always say we are ordained into our life. And I love that way of looking at this practice. It is something we take very seriously, and we also take very lightly. We hold it lightly, we take it seriously, because it is all about this tradition of awakening to all that creates suffering, the state of mind, the turn of mind, the view that leads us to suffering, what we view about our life, and what we don't notice, which is what we do come to notice through long practice and deep practice. The part of really taking on the Zen way is doing retreat, sesshin, very important. Daily practice, very important. Together, both of them. Retreat without daily practice, it's an adventure. Daily practice without retreat it's helpful, it's calming. But it doesn't necessarily take us all the way through to the root of suffering and how we construct the suffering self. So the traditional way of practicing and training is monastic. There've always been householders who support the priests who are doing the real practice. But and then there have always been householders who practice and who are enlightened, who are awakened through the practice. But that's not what's necessarily assumed. Now Buddhism comes into this culture, which is a culture that doesn't have monasteries. We do have a few now, but most of us come to Buddhism having not an inkling about what Buddhism is all about, and have no inclination to go into a monastery because we are born to a life that is about in the world, which is where the Bodhisattva life is lived, bringing our own awake minds and our own warm hearts into service for all of life, humans, animals, and the great earth. So we're at the point, at one point, Buddhism was in China. Was in India. Then the teachings came to China where Zen was really born in Bodhidharma's way of practicing direct meditation, realization. And then it came to Japan, where it took on the robes that most people in our lineage wear, which are like 13th, 14th century robes. And that's the archetype that we all hold of the priest. There are two archetypes, there are two images that we have. One is the Southeast Asian form of Buddhism, where the monks are shaved and they just have a very simple saffron colored robe. That's the Southeast Asian Theravadan practices appear that way to us. And then there are the Japanese, which are black robes with huge sleeves. And that's another image that we have of a Buddhist, an awakened Buddhist person. But now we come here and most of us, t-shirts are pretty much the way. And tattoos and piercings and anything and everything shows up in the Zendo. That's just the outer part, but the inner part is the same as in every culture. This longing for peace in our heart and for a sense that we're real and we're living a real life, a lively, real, authentic, genuine article, who feeling like a real human being is, in this culture, we have to do a lot to get there. Do you know what I'm talking about? The fact that you're here in a Zen center and you're doing Zen practice is you have that aspiration. Something brings you here. A lot of good fortune and blessings that come from all of the awakening practices that have been engaged by people throughout space and time. All of the ancestors have helped us get here. And now we practice to awaken first for ourselves. And it's often said, first we awaken for ourselves, then we awaken for the Sangha. And then we awaken for the Dharma. And that's really a very typical path that unfolds as we go along. One of the topics that came up, well, I'll start this way. So there was, there's a shrine at the monastery, Great Vow Monastery, there's a shrine of vows. And to get there, you have to walk through a big meadow and then through the woods, and it's deep in the woods. And we were gonna have a ceremony where we each took on, renewed, freshened up our teacher vows, the vow that we take on as a teacher, and we each have our own specific ones that we figure out ourselves. So we marched to a drum, a cymbal, and a bell, like our vowing bell, when we bow, an Incan. You want to ring it? Yeah. So we walked that way. All of these heads of lineages that were there were in their very fancy robes. And all of the people who are in training at the monastery were in their samois, which is like kind of what I'm wearing. And we marched to this instrumentation slowly and very, holy. And Hogan, who was one of the heads of the monastery, said, let your whole body quiver with your vows, which is pretty dramatic. But what he was trying to remind us to do is to really take seriously the power of the vow, that we all have vows that we take in our life, either formally or informally. As we grow up, we decide what's important to us, what we're going to be like, what we're not going to be like, what we're going to do and what we're not going to do, right? I mean, there are many different forms of vows. So these were teachers' vows, which were then witnessed by all of the people in training at the monastery. And we got up there, and so I was kind of amused, and not just kind, I'm always amused by what lengths we go to allow ourselves our full spiritual being, right? And here are all these robes, which are very beautiful. And there was a wind that came up and blew the robes. There were flags that marked the edges of the entrance to the shrine of vows. It was quite wonderful. And then we all stated our vows and rang a bell. And the bell was very clangy. And we were told that the bell came from one of the senior practitioners up there, when he was a teenager, had gone to a junkyard and found a trolley bell, a rusted old trolley bell, which he then, carried around for years and then gave to the monastery. He realized that we were ringing the trolley bell to send our vow out to the universe. It was good theater. Very wonderful. And very energizing. When we state our vows in public, they are very much energized by that. We have private vows, but we have public vows. And we will actually, in January, we're going to be having a retreat, a vow retreat, a life vow retreat, where we'll go through the whole process of discerning what your current life vows are. It's very helpful to be clear, because then when you come to decisions or you come to choice points, you're really clear the path that you want to turn in the direction of. And that's one thing that our daily practice, our retreat practice, and our precept practice helps us continually turn in the direction of value, of caring, of being really paying attention to our actions, our words, and our thoughts, because they all have consequences. And knowing our vows and being familiar with the precepts, which we're going to begin our study of again, September 10th, will be the first of a number of classes that will run through the fall on Tuesday evenings. And they are wonderful helpers. So I always think of the first time I realized how to use vows in a very ordinary situation. I was with my daughter, who was 4 years old, and she had gone out with her friends, and they came back with a beautiful posy, bunch of little flowers, which they picked from the gardens on the street. And it was very sweet, and it was beautiful. And I said, one of the vows is not to take anything that's not offered. And so I was thinking of, you ask somebody if you can pick from their garden, but the kids said to me, the flowers said, take me. So there are always different views, and we're always working with our different views of what is important and how to conduct ourselves in the world. So we always come back to, and this was a topic at this gathering too, is what is essential. And so I share that with you to consider for yourself. What is essential? What is essential for you? And to live according to what is most important. What is most important? So that you stay on your central channel. And you return to your central channel. What is most important? And I think that's there are particular times of life where that is really especially needed, the ability to ask ourselves that question. And one is, of course, once you get through, I mean, it's always, but you get through your schooling and you're suddenly, okay, what now? I finished high school, I finished college, I finished graduate school, whatever the training. What is most essential? And that's an ethical question. And that's a heart question. To always return to, so that the vow is a positive vow, and we don't just act from reactive vows, which is one of the things we all have made. I never, if your parents did things that you said, I'm never going to be like that, I'm never going to do that. That's a reactive vow. And that's important. But then to be able to go beyond that to, well, if you're not going to do that, what are you going to do? And really having a vision of what is pleasing, what is free, what is peaceful for you. So early in life, and you just do the best you can. It's very complicated. It's even more complicated now. at the beginning of a younger life. Way more complicated than it was when I was in my 20s, and that was pretty complicated already. But then again, it's really important when you reach the end of your working life and, you know, kind of the moving into old age. What is most essential? Because there's so much. So initially you're gathering when you're younger, you're taking it all on, right? But then what about that time when you begin to, very often we're really focused on all the losses of old age. But what is most essential? To stay as alive as you are until you're not any longer. You know, preparatory dying is a waste. We never know when we're going to die. So we want to be really vital. Well, that's a value that I hold. Really be able to inhabit a sense of vitality, even when it's reduced, doesn't matter. How to use this life well to benefit yourself and the community and all of life. And that sounds very grand, but when we live into it, it's just a very moment by moment, day by day thing. It's what our ordinary life is all about. It's using it really well. And in this practice, the simplicity of the practice is misleading. What do we do when we do zazen? We sit, breathe. That's it. Sitting and breathing, being. When we walk, we can do a visual walk, walking with our eyes, through our eyes. We can walk through our heart. We can do a sound walk. You know, one of the things we did during this is we did forest bathing. And most of you, if you're campers, that's what you do. You know, you bathe in the forest. It all comes down to profound simplicity of heart. We use this word nirvana. So that's an enormous koan that we work in. What does that mean? What does that point to? We can be very, very confused. So I hand you that koan. It's part of our birthright. It is accessible. But the necessity for a strong vow lies at the heart of it. So I urge everybody to really enjoy your practice. Really enjoy and value the treasure of a life of the practice. It's an enormous treasure. And you and I and anybody who does this practice we're treasure keepers. If we continue to practice deeply and thoroughly, enjoying practice, enjoying the fruits of practice, it's not always a lot of fun, by the way. You may have already recognized that. But in the larger sense, it is absolutely such a treasure. And only by maintaining it and realizing it and manifesting it will it continue for the future generations. We are in a long line that runs thousands of years of people who did this very practice and kept it alive and passed it to us. And one of the people, Genjo Marinello, who gave a wonderful talk, he said at the very end of it, I am in the shadow of my teachers. And I say to you, I am in the shadow of my teachers. And we are all in the shadow of these incredibly generous, blessed teachers that we inherit this practice from. So, thank you for listening.
The more grateful we talk about is can you come on page 5.